My son called the Tuesday before Thanksgiving with that particular tone in his voice, measured, professional, the same voice he used when he was about to tell a client their campaign wasn't working. "Mom, about Christmas this year?" He paused just long enough to make me think he was choosing his words carefully. "Vivian's parents are flying in from Scottsdale. The house is going to be wall-to-wall people. You'd probably be more comfortable doing your own thing." I was standing at my kitchen counter in Clover Hill, Tennessee, a mixing bowl in my hands, flour on my apron. I set the bowl down. "I understand," I said. 2 words. That's all I had. He exhaled, relieved. "We'll do New Year's. Just us. I'll call next week and we'll figure something out." He hung up before I could say anything else. I looked around my kitchen. Every surface told a story: the copper pots Richard had hunted down at estate sales across 3 states, the handwritten index cards taped inside cabinet doors, the notebook open on the island with my cramped cursive filling every line. 31 years of recipes. 31 years of developing, testing, failing, starting again. The kitchen smelled like brown butter and cardamom because I'd been testing my grandmother's apple cake variation for the 4th time that month. Richard used to say this kitchen was the truest version of me. He'd lean in the doorway with his coffee and just watch. "Don't stop on my account," he'd say. "I could watch you work all day." Richard died on a Thursday in March, 18 months before that phone call. He was 67 years old and apparently perfectly healthy, and then he wasn't. An aneurysm, the doctor said, very fast, very little pain. I stood in the hospital hallway and couldn't make sense of any of it because that morning he had eaten 2 of my test biscuits and told me the honey glaze needed more lemon. I never did adjust that recipe. I couldn't bring myself to. After the funeral, my son called every Sunday for 6 weeks. My daughter Patrice flew in from Portland twice. She brought store-bought casseroles and sat on the couch looking uncomfortable while my granddaughter Lily colored at my feet. Lily was 8 years old, and she had Richard's dark eyes and his habit of going very still when she was thinking hard about something. At the graveside, she had held my hand so tightly I could feel her pulse. She didn't ask where Grandpa went. She just leaned against me and stayed. The calls from Marcus got shorter as the months passed. The visits from Patrice became rain checks that never materialized. By the time autumn arrived, I was largely invisible to both of them. I understood intellectually that grief has a shelf life for the living, that people return to their own lives, that I wasn't owed constant attention. I understood all of that. It didn't stop the silence from settling into the walls. What kept me moving was the work. I had spent the last 3 decades doing something nobody in my family had ever taken entirely seriously. I developed recipes, not as a hobby, not as a side project, as a discipline, as craft, as the most important professional endeavor of my life. I had a food blog that had grown slowly and steadily over 12 years to nearly 400,000 readers. I had a newsletter. I had a method. The method was the thing. I called it slow bloom baking, a technique built around extended fermentation, temperature staging, and ingredient sequencing that produced results no standard recipe could replicate. The depth of flavor was different. The texture was different. I had spent a decade refining it. Every variation was documented in my notebooks, dated, annotated, tested across different seasons and altitudes and humidity levels. I had a manuscript, 412 pages, ready for a publisher, the culmination of everything I had learned. 3 weeks after Marcus excluded me from Christmas, I got a call from a woman named Nora Okafor. She was the acquisitions editor at Millstone Press in Nashville. Dr. Nora Okafor, actually she had a background in food science before she moved into publishing, which was precisely why she had tracked down my contact information. She had been reading my blog for 2 years. She wanted to talk about the manuscript. We met at a coffee shop near Vanderbilt. She read through my sample chapters for 45 minutes without speaking. Then she looked up and said, "Dorothy, this is the kind of book that changes how people cook. Not just for a season, for the rest of their lives. We need to talk about what a real publishing deal looks like." I drove home with the windows down, even though it was November and cold. I hadn't felt this particular feeling weightless, purposeful, charged Since the early years of my marriage, when Richard and I were building something together, and the whole world felt like it was leaning forward. That night I called Marcus. It was late, but I couldn't wait. He answered sounding foggy, and then sharper when I told him what had happened. A book deal? His voice changed the way a room changes when someone turns on a light. Tell me more. I described the manuscript, the slow bloom method, the terms Nora had outlined. There was a silence on his end that I should have read more carefully. Mom, this is incredible. He was fully awake now. This isn't just a cookbook, this is a brand. A real brand. Slow bloom baking. Artisan. Premium. Do you know what that's worth in the current market? I laughed. I'm not thinking about markets, Marcus. I'm thinking about getting this into people's kitchens. Sure. Of course. But Mom, he paused. What if we did this together? You have the expertise. I have the marketing, the connections. We could take this somewhere huge. I said I needed to think about it. He said, of course, take your time, love you, Mom. After we hung up, I stood at my kitchen window for a long time. The backyard was dark. Richard's garden was overgrown now in the way things go, when the person who tended them is gone. I thought about what Nora had said when we scheduled a follow-up meeting. Before you sign anything, get copyright registration in order. Your manuscript, your method documentation, your blog content, all of it. Do it before you tell anyone else your plans. I'd smiled and said I thought that seemed a bit much. She had looked at me with an expression that wasn't unkind. Dorothy, I've watched brilliant food creators lose their life's work to people they trusted. Please just do it. I called a copyright attorney in Nashville the next morning. His name was Stuart Garrett. He had kind eyes and a very direct manner. He walked me through everything copyright registration on the manuscript, trademark application on the slow bloom name, documentation of the method's development timeline. I spent 3 hours in his office going through my notebooks, my dated blog posts, 12 years of digital records. Stuart said, "You have a cleaner documentation trail than most professional inventors I work with. Whoever taught you to date everything did you a tremendous favor." "Richard," I said. He nodded. "Smart man." The process took 2 weeks. When it was complete, Stuart sent me a folder of certificates and filings and said, "Now you can tell the world." I sat with that folder in my lap and felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph. Not relief. Just a quiet, private certainty. This is mine. Marcus called in early December. He wanted to have lunch. He'd been reading through the sample chapters I'd shared with him months earlier, he said. He had some thoughts about positioning. I met him at a restaurant near his office in Nashville. He looked polished and enthusiastic, the way he always looked when he was building towards something. He had a vision, he said. A food brand anchored by my slow bloom method. Not just a cookbook, a product line, a lifestyle brand, subscription boxes, partnerships with premium grocery chains. His company had relationships with investors. The timing was perfect. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a deck 20 slides, clean design, his company's logo. I flipped through it. The language was careful. Proprietary baking methodology developed through decades of research. Unique fermentation approach creating unmatched depth of flavor. I looked up. Marcus. He smiled. Just an early vision deck. I wanted to show you what's possible. The language makes it sound like you developed the methodology. He shrugged. You're part of the brand. Of course you are. It's your work and my marketing. That's the partnership. But you haven't mentioned my name once in these 20 slides. He had an answer for everything. That's just a draft. Your name will be front and center, obviously. Mom, I'm trying to build you something real here. Let me run with this for a few weeks. Set some meetings. See what kind of interest we generate. Then we'll bring you in and make it official. Something in my stomach pulled tight. I said I wanted to think about it. He said, of course. He hugged me in the parking lot. Quick, professional. I drove home and sat in the kitchen and thought about what Stuart had told me when I asked if I should consult with Marcus's company. He'd said, your copyright predates anything they'll file by months. You're protected. But Dorothy, don't share the full methodology documentation, not the notebooks, not the technical process breakdowns. Keep the consultancy conceptual. So that's what I did. I went to 2 meetings at Marcus's office in December. I talked about fermentation principles, about temperature as an ingredient, about the philosophy behind slow bloom baking. I never brought my notebooks. I never shared the technical sequences. I watched a room of young marketing professionals take notes and nod enthusiastically, and I watched Marcus present my ideas in polished language as though they were architecture he had designed. And I was simply the interesting elder consultant who had inspired him. One afternoon in the parking garage after a meeting, a woman stopped me. She was maybe 55, sharp-eyed, wearing a very good coat. "Dr. Ellen Park," she said, "food industry investor. I want to ask you something directly. The methodology Marcus is describing, the fermentation staging, the temperature sequencing. How long have you been developing that?" I looked at her. She looked back. 30 years, I said. She nodded slowly. That's what I thought. She handed me her card. "Call me." I called her that evening. She said, "I've been in this industry for 20 years. What Marcus is describing in those meetings is not a methodology his company developed. I know the difference between original work and repackaged expertise. I want to know more about your actual plans." And Dorothy, she paused, "check what he's been filing." I called Stuart Garrett immediately. He pulled public records. Marcus's company had filed a trademark application 6 days earlier, Slow Bloom Foods, LLC. The filing described a proprietary baking methodology as the company's original intellectual property. I sat at my kitchen table and read the filing 3 times. The language mirrored my own documentation almost exactly. The fermentation staging, the temperature sequencing, the cold rest period I had named the bloom pause. He had learned it all from the consulting sessions. He had reverse engineered the full method from the conceptual explanations I'd given in those meetings, filled in the pieces I'd withheld, and filed it as his. I didn't call him. I called Stuart. Stuart was quiet for a moment after I finished reading him the filing. Then he said, "Your registration predates his application by 9 weeks. Their filing will be rejected once it's cross-referenced. He can't trademark what you already own. But Dorothy, I want you to understand something." He paused. "This isn't a mistake. This is a deliberate attempt to claim ownership of your work before you could publicly establish it. I think you need to think very carefully about what you want to do next." I thought about what I wanted to do next for 3 days. I sat in Richard's chair in the evening and talked to his photograph. "I know what you would say," I told him. "You would say protect yourself. You would say document everything. You would say the truth matters more than keeping the peace." He smiled back at me. Forever 65, forever certain I could handle whatever came. I called Nora at Millstone Press. I told her everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Dorothy, I want you to meet someone. Her name is Carol Watts. She's a journalist at a publication I think you know. This story, Women in Food, Intellectual Property, Family and Betrayal. This is a story that matters, and I think you should be the one to tell it on your terms." I met Carol Watts at a diner outside of Nashville 2 weeks before Christmas. She was 50, efficient, with a reporter's habit of listening more than she spoke. I brought everything: copyright certificates, trademark filings, Stuart's analysis of Marcus's application, emails, dated notebook scans, recordings from the consulting meetings. Tennessee is a one-party consent state, and Stuart had suggested I start recording 3 weeks earlier. Carol took notes for 2 hours. When she looked up, she said, "This is airtight, and it's important. When do you want this published?" I had already been thinking about that. I had a book deal finalizing at Millstone Press. I had a launch date, January 2nd. And I had a very specific idea about timing. Marcus sent a text on December 20th. "Christmas this year is intimate. Just Vivian's family and a few close friends. I hope you understand." I held my phone and read it 4 times. I texted back, I'm family, Marcus. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. You know what I mean. Next year for sure. I put the phone down and looked at Lily's drawings on my refrigerator. She had been sending them to me since September, 1 or 2 a month, in small envelopes with careful handwriting on the outside. No return address, just my name and my street. Inside, crayon scenes of the 2 of us. Me and Grandma baking. Me and Grandma in the garden. Me and Grandma at the fair with the Ferris wheel in the background. She never wrote notes. She didn't have to. 8 years old, and she already knew that loving her grandmother openly was something that required strategy. Christmas Eve, I cooked for myself. A real dinner, not a consolation dinner pot roast with the braised onion gravy Richard had always requested, roasted root vegetables, my grandmother's dinner rolls. I set the table properly. I lit a candle. I put on the record player. It wasn't sad exactly. It was quiet in a way I had learned to sit with. At 9:47, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, "Grandma?" A whisper. Scared and small, "It's me, Lily." I sat down immediately. "Hi, sweetheart." "I'm at the party," she said, her voice low. "Uncle Derek let me use his phone in the bathroom. I'm not supposed to call you, but I wanted to say Merry Christmas." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I miss you. I miss you more than you know. I made you a drawing," she said. "It's the biggest one I've ever made. It's us in your kitchen, and I drew all the copper pots and everything. I've been saving it since October because I couldn't figure out how to mail it without Mom seeing. I will treasure it no matter when it arrives." Background noise filtered through music, voices, a door somewhere opening. "Grandma, I have to go." She was whispering faster now. "I love you so much. I love you so much, baby. Merry Christmas." The line went quiet. I sat holding the phone until the screen went dark. At 11:58, I opened my laptop. The Carol Watts piece was scheduled to publish in 45 minutes at a major food industry journal with national distribution. My Millstone Press announcement was set for midnight. Stewart had called that afternoon to confirm Marcus's trademark application was already flagged for conflict with my prior registration. I thought about calling it off. I sat with that thought for a real amount of time. I thought about Marcus as a boy, the way he used to come into this kitchen and climb onto the counter and eat my test cookies before I could stop him and say the ones with raisins weren't for eating. I thought about Vivienne's carefully polite smiles. I thought about Lily in a bathroom at a party she shouldn't have to navigate, whispering into a borrowed phone. I thought about Richard saying, "The truth matters more than keeping the peace, Dot, even when it costs you something," especially then. At midnight, I pressed publish on the Millstone Press announcement. 30 seconds later, Carol's piece went live. The headline read, "Tennessee Baker's Life Work. Stolen by her own son, a story about family, food, and who owns what you create." My phone started ringing at 12:08. I turned it face down on the coffee table and sat very still in the dark. The refrigerator hummed. The candle I'd lit at dinner had burned down to its base. Outside, my neighbor's Christmas lights blinked steadily against the winter dark. I could hear the faint sound of caroling somewhere down the street. Marcus called 14 times before I stopped counting. Rebecca twice. Vivienne once. Unknown numbers I didn't answer. My email inbox climbed from 12 unread to 40 to 200 and something. I made tea and didn't drink it, and watched the steam rise and dissipate in the quiet kitchen. The messages arriving from strangers were already sorting themselves. "You're a hero. Thank you for standing up. This is exactly what happens to women who create." And the others, "You destroyed your own son. You couldn't let him succeed. What kind of mother does this at Christmas?" I read all of them. Every single word. I thought I owed that much to the people moved enough to write. Marcus held a press conference the next morning. I didn't watch it live. Patrice sent me the link with no message attached, just the URL. I watched it at 8 in the morning with my coffee. He looked terrible in the way people look when they haven't slept and have been crying and are still deciding in real time how much to admit. He had a prepared statement. He read it without looking at the cameras. The Slow Bloom Foods trademark application filed by his company did not accurately represent the origins of the methodology. His mother, Dorothy Callahan, was the sole developer of the slow bloom baking method. He had used her consulting sessions to reconstruct the technical components she had not explicitly shared with him, had filed the trademark without her knowledge or consent, and had presented her work to potential investors without disclosing her ownership of the registered copyright. A reporter asked if his mother had authorized any of this. He said no. Another reporter asked if he understood that constituted intellectual property theft. He stood at the podium for a long moment. Then he said yes. He walked off before the questions continued. The clip was 37 seconds of silence, followed by yes, followed by the sound of a door. I set my coffee down, sat with the weight of it. Carol Watts called me that afternoon. The story had been picked up by 17 national outlets by noon. My name was trending on 3 platforms. Millstone Press reported the book announcement had driven 43,000 pre-orders in 12 hours. I sat at my kitchen table and listened to Carol read me some of the responses from women in food, women in creative industries, women who said they had handed their work to people they trusted and spent years watching it credited to someone else. A woman named Patricia Nguyen, a pastry chef in Chicago, had commented, "I am 61 years old, and I have watched this happen to every brilliant woman I have ever known. Thank you for fighting back." I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that. I felt like I had swallowed something heavy and wasn't sure yet what it would cost me to digest. 3 days after Christmas, an email arrived from a food industry executive I had never met. Her name was Dr. Renata Figueroa, Vice President of Culinary Partnerships at a national grocery chain. She had been watching the story unfold. She had read my blog for years, she said, though she had never mentioned it publicly. She wanted to have a conversation about a partnership not the kind Marcus had imagined, but a real one, built around my name, my method, my ownership, a product line in their premium section, a dedicated space in their marketing, a genuine collaboration. I forwarded the email to Stuart and to my new business advisor, a woman named Grace Kim who had come recommended by Nora. Grace called me in 20 minutes. "Dorothy," she said, "I think you need to sit down for this conversation because the number they're going to put on the table is going to feel surreal." I said I was already sitting. "Good," she said. "Stay there." Marcus texted me on December 28th. Just one message. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know that's insufficient. I know there's nothing I can say. But I'm sorry." I read it 6 times and didn't respond. He called on January 2nd. I answered on the 4th ring. His voice was stripped down, all the polish gone. Just my son's voice from a long time ago. "Mom, thank you for answering." I didn't say anything, just waited. "Why did you do it?" he asked finally, and I knew he wasn't asking about the press release. He was asking about the 30 years in the kitchen, about the notebooks, about all of it. "Why did you build all of that and not?" He stopped. "Not protect yourself better? Not tell us what it was worth?" I thought about how to answer. "I built it because it mattered to me," I said. "Not because of what it was worth. Your father understood that. What I built was never for sale. It was mine, the same way your voice is yours. You don't share it because it's valuable. You share it because sharing it is how it becomes real." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I told myself I was helping you, that I was making your work into something the world would actually notice. I told myself you'd thank me eventually." His voice dropped. "I know how that sounds now, but I need you to understand that somewhere in my head I genuinely believed it." "I know," I said. "I believe you believed it. That doesn't make it less of a theft." "I know." Silence. "Mom, I was jealous." He said it quickly, like he needed to get it out before he could stop himself. "I was jealous my entire adult life. You have this thing, this gift, that everyone can see except somehow you never saw how rare it was. Dad saw it. Your readers see it. And I spent years watching people look at you the way they never looked at me. So I thought if I could make your work into something commercially real, something that had my fingerprints on it too," then maybe he didn't finish. I let the silence sit there. You didn't have to be me, Marcus. I said it quietly. You just had to be you. Whatever that is, you never gave yourself the space to find out. He cried then. I let him. After a while, he said, "Can we try to rebuild this?" I don't mean Christmas next year. I mean actually try, with real effort over real time. I don't know, I told him honestly. I don't know yet what I'm willing to do, but I'm willing to find out. That's a start. It's more than I deserve. Start with therapy, I said. Real therapy. Not once, not twice. Actual work on yourself. Sustained. Figure out who you are without the job and the ambition and the wanting to be more than my son, he said he would. I said I'd call him next month. He said okay. I hung up and sat in the kitchen for a long time. The Slow Bloom manuscript sat in a box on the counter. The published copy just arrived from Millstone Press. The cover a photograph of my copper pots, and a loaf of bread with the crumb structure that had taken me 6 years to perfect. My name on the front. My method. My work. My life in that kitchen with Richard's voice from the doorway and Lily's drawings on the refrigerator and 31 years of choosing to stay. Lily called me on New Year's Eve. Her father had set up an email account for her, she explained. She was allowed to contact me whenever she wanted now. She had approximately 1,100 things to tell me. She had learned a new piece on piano. She had gotten a hamster. She had filled an entire sketchbook with drawings of me that she was bringing next weekend when her father drove her down. Her voice was so bright and so fast and so entirely itself that I had to press the phone against my ear and close my eyes just to hold all of it. "Are you crying, Grandma?" she asked. "A little," I admitted. "Don't be sad." "I'm not sad at all, sweetheart." "Then why?" "Because I'm happy," I said. "It's different from sad, but sometimes they feel similar for a minute. When you're older, you'll know what I mean." She considered this. "Okay," she said. "I'll take your word for it. Grandma, yes? Dad said we don't have to hide anymore." I looked across my kitchen at the refrigerator covered in crayon drawings, at the copper pots hanging in the window light, at the notebook open on the counter with my handwriting filling every line. "No," I said. "We don't have to hide anymore. Not anymore." She came the following Saturday. She arrived at the door in a purple coat with her backpack and a rolled-up poster tube she held carefully in both hands, like it was something fragile. When I opened the door, she launched herself at me, and I caught her, and held her, and breathed in the particular smell of her cold air and strawberry shampoo, and that inexplicable lily smell that I had missed for months like a physical ache. She stood in my kitchen for 10 seconds and then said, "Okay, I want to make everything." "What are we making?" I laughed and said we had all day and she should pick. She picked 3 things. We made 2 of them. The third one, a complicated laminated pastry. I told her we'd save for spring when we had more time and she could see the whole process. At lunch she asked, "Grandma, was it worth it? Everything that happened?" I thought about that question for a real moment. She waited with Richard's quality of stillness, watching me think. "Yes," I said, "but not for the reasons I thought when I started. I thought it would be worth it if the work got recognized, if the truth came out, and those things happened. But that's not why it was worth it. Then why? Because I learned I didn't have to be invisible just because someone decided I was." She looked at me with her dark eyes. I spent 2 years getting smaller so that no one would be uncomfortable with how much space I took up. And one day I just stopped. I took back my space. I took back my work. I took back myself. She thought about this. "I don't ever want to be invisible," she said. "Then, don't be." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You have everything you need to take up space. Don't let anyone talk you into shrinking." She nodded very seriously, the way she nodded when she was recording something for permanent storage. "Now," she said, "can we start on the laminated pastry? It's not spring yet, but I really want to see the layers." I laughed so hard I had to set down my coffee. "It's absolutely not spring," I told her, "and we are absolutely starting on those layers. I'm writing this now in late spring. The Slow Bloom cookbook is in its 4th printing. The grocery partnership launches this fall a product line with my name on it, my method in every package. my story and every piece of marketing material because Renata insisted the story was the brand, and the brand was the story, and I finally believed her. The work I spent 30 years building is going into kitchens across the country. By people who will use it, adapt it, teach it to their children, turn it into something I haven't imagined yet. That's how good work survives. Marcus is in therapy. We talk once a month. The conversations are careful, honest. Not warm yet, but moving towards something I can't quite name. He started teaching a small marketing course at a community college 3 nights a week. He told me last month that it was the first work he'd done in years that felt genuinely his. I told him good. I meant it. Patrice and I are rebuilding slowly. It's awkward. It's real. I'll take it. Lily comes every other weekend. We are working through my grandmother's entire recipe archive, one Saturday at a time. She wants to understand where everything comes from. That's the question she keeps asking. Grandma, where did this come from? Who made this first? Why did they make it this way? I tell her everything I know. I write it all down. Dated. Annotated. Signed. Because here is what 31 years in a kitchen taught me, and what I would tell every woman who is quietly building something in a room where nobody is looking. Document everything. Not because the people you love will betray you. Maybe they won't. Maybe you'll be luckier than I was. But because your work is real, and it is yours, and it deserves to exist in the world with your name on it, your ideas don't need to be protected from other people nearly as much as they need to be claimed by you. You built it. Say so, out loud, in writing, in court if necessary. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for recognition. Don't wait to feel like you've earned the right to stand in the space your work deserves. You built it. It belongs to you. Take it.